Padre Pio would sometimes fast for 7 consecutive days without eating even a morsel of bread. When asked why he subjected himself to such hardship, he always gave the same answer: each day of fasting releases a soul from purgatory. Not a prayer, not a mass, a direct liberation, a soul passing from suffering into eternal light. In 7 days, 7 souls were saved. And he learned this secret directly from Saint Anthony the Great, the father of all hermits, during a mystical apparition that changed his life forever. What I'm about to reveal to you today is a secret that the modern church has almost completely forgotten, a secret that was at the heart of the spirituality of the early Christians, a secret so powerful that demons tremble when someone puts it into practice. Sacrificial fasting for the souls in purgatory, not just any fast, a specific fast, taught by Saint Anthony over 1600 years ago and confirmed by Padre Pio in the 20th century. In just 2 days, on January 17th, the Church celebrates the feast of Saint Anthony the Hermit, and on that day, a spiritual door opens. A door you can use to liberate the souls of your departed loved ones. But to pass through this door, you must prepare yourselves. And that preparation starts today, not tomorrow. Today. You might be asking yourselves, why fasting? Why not simply pray? Isn't it enough to recite the rosary or have a mass said? These practices are good, of course. But Padre Pio was adamant. Fasting possesses a power that prayer alone cannot equal, a power of immediate liberation. Let me explain why. And to do that, I need to tell you what happened one night in January 1912 in Padre Pio's cell in Pietrelcina. It was 3 years before he received the permanent stigmata. He was 24 years old, and that night he had a vision that marked him forever. He was in prayer, as he was every night, when suddenly the temperature in his cell plummeted. An icy cold enveloped him, a cold that was unnatural, a cold that came from elsewhere. Padre Pio knew immediately that he was no longer alone. In the darkest corner of the room, a form began to materialize. It wasn't a demon this time, nor was it an ordinary angel. It was a very old man, dressed in a simple linen tunic, with a long white beard that reached his waist. His eyes shone with a supernatural light, and around him floated a scent of the desert and of eternity. Padre Pio immediately recognized who stood before him. It was Saint Anthony the Great, the patriarch of monasticism, the man who had spent over 80 years in the Egyptian desert, fighting demons and interceding for souls. The man whose spiritual battles were so intense that witnesses had seen him levitate during his prayers. Saint Anthony approached Padre Pio and spoke. His voice was like the sound of the wind in the desert sands, gentle but powerful, ancient but alive. He said, "My son, I have come to reveal to you what I learned during my years in the desert, the secret that the Church Fathers knew but that modern generations have forgotten, the secret of the liberating fast." Padre Pio trembled, not from fear, but from reverence. He was in the presence of one of the greatest saints in Christian history, a man who had lived over 100 years, a man who had seen things that no one else had seen. Saint Anthony continued, "In the desert, I learned that the human body is a prison for the soul, not a prison created by God, but a prison that we reinforce every day through our attachments. Every time we eat more than we need, we add bars to that prison. Every time we give in to our appetites, we thicken the walls. And these walls do not only imprison us, they also imprison our ability to help others." Padre Pio listened, fascinated. He was beginning to understand something profound, something he had never read in any theology book. Saint Anthony explained, "When you fast, you do the reverse. You weaken the walls of your bodily prison. You create breaches in the barriers between the visible and the invisible world. And through these breaches, your prayer can pass with tenfold power. But that's not all. Through these breaches, you can also pull souls from purgatory towards the light. It's an extraordinary image. Imagine the walls of purgatory as walls of stone. Imagine the souls locked within, awaiting their release. Now imagine that each day of fasting you offer creates a crack in those walls, a crack through which a soul can escape. Saint Anthony revealed to Padre Pio a precise formula, a formula that he himself had received during a vision of Christ, during his years in the desert. The formula of the 3-day fast. He told him, 3 days of fasting, offered with a pure intention for a specific soul, have the power to liberate that soul from purgatory, not to relieve it, to liberate it completely, to send it directly to paradise. Padre Pio could not believe his ears. Only 3 days, when some souls spent centuries in purgatory. How was that possible? Saint Anthony smiled. He had anticipated this question. He explained, purgatory is not a sentence of time, as humans understand it. Purgatory is a state of purification, and purification depends on 2 things: the condition of the soul itself and the sacrifices offered by the living. He continued, when a living person fasts for 3 days with a pure intention, they create a spiritual energy of extraordinary intensity. This energy descends to purgatory, like a ray of sunlight into a dark cavern. It envelops the soul for whom one fasts. It burns away the impurities that hold it back. It propels it towards heaven. But Saint Anthony added a crucial warning, a warning that Padre Pio never forgot, and that he passed on to all those who came to see him to liberate their deceased loved ones. He said, the fast must be pure. It must not be offered for your own glory. It must not be offered to prove your holiness. It must not be offered to gain merit. It must be offered only, exclusively, totally, for the soul you want to liberate. If even a single drop of egoism contaminates your fast, it loses its liberating power. It's exactly the same principle as the rosary of annihilation that I spoke to you about previously. The ego is the enemy of all effective prayer. The ego blocks the channels between heaven and earth. The ego transforms even the most generous sacrifices into sterile acts. Saint Anthony the Great then taught Padre Pio the exact method of the 3-day fast, a precise, structured method with specific rules, and it's this method that I'm now going to share with you. The same method that Padre Pio taught for 60 years to the pilgrims of San Giovanni Rotondo. The first day of the fast is called the Day of Detachment. During this day, you eat nothing solid, only water, no juice, no broth, just pure water. This water-only fast creates the first cracks in the walls that separate you from the spiritual world. But the physical fast is only half the work. The other half is the mental fast. During the day of detachment, you must also fast from all distractions. No television, no radio, no unnecessary conversations, no entertaining reading. You're creating an inner void that corresponds to the emptiness of your stomach. And during this void, you pray, not just any prayer, a specific prayer that Saint Anthony the Great transmitted to Padre Pio, a prayer that you must recite at least 7 times during the day. Here it is. Lord Jesus Christ, you who fasted 40 days in the desert, accept this sacrifice and of my body for the soul of my departed loved one. May my hunger become their nourishment. May my thirst become their drink. May my emptiness become their fullness. Through the intercession of Saint Anthony the Great, release this soul from purgatory and lead them into your eternal light. Amen. This prayer must be recited slowly, with a total awareness of each word. It must be accompanied by a visualization. You must see in your mind's eye the soul of your departed loved one in purgatory. You must see them, surrounded by purifying flames, and with each recitation of the prayer you must see these flames diminish slightly. The second day of the fast is called the day of purification. This is the most difficult day. Your body starts to protest, your stomach contracts with hunger, your mind bombards you with excuses to stop. It's too hard. It's not necessary. God will understand. One day is enough. These thoughts don't come from you. They come from the forces that don't want you to release that soul. The devil knows very well what you're doing, and he'll do everything to stop you. Padre Pio warned his penitents. On the second day, expect intense temptations, expect deep discouragement, expect doubts about everything you believe. This is the sign that your fast is working. This is the sign that the enemy is afraid. To get through the day of purification, Saint Anthony the Great taught a special technique. Every time you feel hunger, you must say mentally, "This hunger, I offer it for you." Every time you feel fatigue, you must say, "This fatigue, I offer it for you." Every time you feel discouragement, you must say, "This discouragement, I offer it for you." You transform each suffering into an offering. You alchemize each pain into a prayer. This is what mystics call the spiritualization of matter. Your physical body becomes an instrument of spiritual liberation. The third day of the fast is called the Day of Liberation. This is the day when everything comes to fruition. This is the day when the soul of your departed loved one can finally be freed. On this day, you continue the water-only fast, but you add a crucial element. On the Day of Liberation, you must spend at least 3 hours in continuous prayer. Not 3 hours scattered throughout the day, 3 hours in a row, preferably between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., what mystics call the hour of mercy. During these 3 hours, you recite the complete rosary, all 4 mysteries, 20 decades, and with each Hail Mary, you visualize your departed loved one rising gradually towards the light. Saint Anthony the Great revealed to Padre Pio that the moment of liberation usually occurs at the dawn of the third day. At the moment when the sun begins to peak over the horizon, a mystical correspondence occurs. The physical light of the sun becomes the symbol of the divine light that engulfs the liberated soul. Padre Pio later recounted that many times in his life he had witnessed this liberation. While he was praying at dawn on the third day of the fast, he would suddenly see the soul for whom he was fasting appear before him, radiant with light, their face transformed by joy, their arms raised towards heaven. And the soul would always say the same thing: "Thank you, I am free. I am going to contemplate the face of God." These visions were not hallucinations caused by fasting. Padre Pio clearly distinguished them from the physical effects of food deprivation. These visions were divine confirmations, proof that the sacrifice had been accepted, signs that the soul had truly passed from purgatory to paradise. But here is something important that you must understand. The 3-day fast is not for everyone. There are conditions, prerequisites, contraindications. Firstly, you must be in good health. People who are ill, pregnant women, frail elderly people should not undertake a 3-day water-only fast. For them, Padre Pio recommended a modified fast, reducing meals to only once a day, eliminating all pleasurable food and offering this partial deprivation with the same intention. Secondly, you must be in a state of grace. This means that you must have gone to confession recently. A fast offered by someone in a state of mortal sin has no effectiveness for the souls in purgatory. It's like trying to send a radio message with a broken device. The message doesn't go through. Thirdly, you must have a pure intention. As I said, the slightest contamination of selfishness cancels out the power of the fast. You're not fasting to impress others. You're not fasting to feel spiritually superior. You're fasting only to free a soul. Saint Anthony the Great had given Padre Pio a simple test to check the purity of intention. He had told him, before starting the fast, ask yourself this question: if no one ever knew that I fasted, if I received no recognition, no visible merit, no confirmation that it worked, would I still make this sacrifice? If the answer is yes, your intention is pure. If you hesitate, it means that there is still ego mixed into your motivation. And in that case, you must purify your intention before you begin. Padre Pio himself practiced this fast regularly, not just for specific deceased people, but also for the forgotten souls in purgatory. These are the souls who have no one left on earth to pray for them. These are the souls whose families have passed on or have lost their faith. These are the souls who would be condemned to remain in purgatory for centuries if saints like Padre Pio did not fast for them. One day, a woman named Eleanor Bennett came to see Padre Pio in San Giovanni Rotondo. She was from upstate New York. Her husband had died 20 years prior. During those 20 years, she had prayed for him every day. She had arranged for hundreds of masses to be said. She had recited thousands of rosaries, but she still harbored a terrible doubt. Was her husband still in purgatory? When she posed the question to Padre Pio, he closed his eyes for a long moment. He seemed to be looking at something others couldn't see. Then he opened his eyes and said, "Yes, your husband is still in purgatory. Your prayers have eased his suffering, but they have not freed him." Eleanor was devastated. 20 years of prayers, and her husband was still suffering. How was this possible? What had she done wrong? Padre Pio explained gently, "You have done nothing wrong. Your prayers were good, but some souls require more. Some souls have accumulated such heavy spiritual debts that even years of prayer are not enough. For these souls, a more radical sacrifice is needed. It requires fasting." Padre Pio then proposed something extraordinary to Eleanor. He said, "I will fast with you for 3 days. You and we will fast together for your husband. My sacrifice added to yours will create a liberating force that purgatory cannot hold back." Eleanor accepted immediately. She was ready to do anything to free her husband. What happened during those 3 days is recorded in the monastery's archives. Eleanor fasted in her hotel room near the shrine. Padre Pio fasted in his cell. They did not see each other, but they prayed the same prayers at the same hours. They offered their hunger for the same man. They united their sacrifices into a single river of grace. On the morning of the 3rd day, at dawn, Eleanor had a vision. She saw her husband standing in her room, but it was no longer the husband she had known. His face was luminous. His eyes shone with peace. He wore a robe as white as snow. He said to her, "My dear wife, after 20 years of waiting, I am finally free. Your prayers sustained me, your masses comforted me, but it was your fasting, united with that of the holy priest, that freed me. I am now going to see the face of God. We will meet again in paradise." Then he disappeared, and Eleanor knew, with absolute certainty, that her husband was in heaven. When she rushed to tell Padre Pio about her vision, he smiled and said, "I know, I saw him too. He passed by my cell to thank me before ascending to heaven. The angels accompanied him. They were singing the Gloria. This story of Eleanor Bennett is not unique. In the archives of San Giovanni Rotondo, there are hundreds of similar testimonies. People who had prayed for years for their deceased loved ones, without apparent result, then who undertook the 3-day fast on the advice of Padre Pio, and who received miraculous confirmations of the liberation of their loved ones. There was the case of Dr. David Miller, a physician from Chicago whose father had died in a state of grave sin without being able to confess. David had arranged for complete Gregorian masses, 30 consecutive masses, without any sign that his father had been released. After fasting for 3 days with pure intention, he dreamed of his father dressed in white, telling him that his son's sacrifice had made up for what he had been unable to do himself before dying. There was the case of Sister Elizabeth, a Carmelite nun who regularly fasted for the forgotten souls. She kept a journal of her visions. In 40 years of this practice, she had documented over 2,000 liberations of souls. 2,000 souls passed from purgatory to paradise thanks to her fasts. There was the case of Father Michael, a priest from Boston, who doubted the effectiveness of fasting until Padre Pio challenged him. Fast for 3 days for the soul of your mother, and you will see. Father Michael accepted. On the 3rd day, while he was celebrating Mass, he saw his mother standing beside the altar, radiant, her hands clasped in prayer, her eyes raised toward the tabernacle. She said nothing. She simply smiled. Then she disappeared in a golden light. These testimonies are not pious legends. They are documented, dated, signed by witnesses. They are part of the acts of Padre Pio's beatification process. The Church has examined them. The Church has validated them. The Church recognizes that something real was happening when the faithful followed Padre Pio's teachings on liberating fasts. But why is fasting so powerful? What gives it this ability to liberate souls that even prayer does not possess to the same degree? Padre Pio explained it with a simple image. He said, "Prayer is like sending money to someone in prison to improve their conditions. Fasting is like paying their bail to get them out. Prayer alleviates. Fasting liberates. Prayer softens the sufferings of purgatory. Fasting shortens the time spent there. Prayer is a medication. Fasting is a cure. This distinction is crucial. It explains why so many Catholics have prayed for years for their deceased loved ones, without ever receiving confirmation that they are freed. Their prayers are good. Their prayers are useful. Their prayers soothe the souls. But for definitive liberation, a more radical sacrifice is sometimes necessary. Saint Anthony the Great explained to Padre Pio the theological reason for this difference. He told him, "Purgatory exists to purify the soul of earthly attachments. These attachments were formed in the body. They are linked to the body. Therefore, only a sacrifice of the body can completely undo them. When you pray, you use your mind. That's good. But when you fast, you use your body. You voluntarily make this body suffer, which is the source of earthly attachments. And this voluntary suffering creates a mystical correspondence with the suffering of the soul in purgatory. It's as if 2 musical instruments are playing the same note. When you fast for a soul, you tune in to its spiritual frequency. You vibrate in unison with it. And this resonance creates a liberating force that nothing else can create. The Desert Fathers knew this secret. The first monks of Egypt, Syria, and Palestine fasted constantly for the souls of the departed. It was an essential part of their vocation. They saw themselves as professional liberators of souls from purgatory, specialists in effective prayer. But over time, that knowledge faded. The modern Church has placed emphasis on other forms of devotion. Fasting became a marginal practice, reserved for Lent and a few other days of the year, and with this loss, millions of souls remained in purgatory longer than necessary. Padre Pio was determined to revive this tradition. Whenever a pilgrim came to him seeking guidance for a deceased loved one, he recommended fasting, not as the first option, mind you. First masses, first the rosary, first indulgences. But when those practices weren't enough, when the soul seemed blocked, then fasting became the ultimate weapon, and the results spoke for themselves. Testimonials flooded in, confirmations multiplied. The 3-day fast worked. Now, I must tell you about something more delicate, something few dare to mention, the spiritual risks of fasting. Yes, there are risks, not physical risks, if you're in good health, of course, but spiritual risks that you need to know before you embark on this practice. The first risk is spiritual pride. When you fast and feel you're doing something extraordinary, you can fall into vanity. You might start seeing yourself as superior to other Catholics who don't fast. You might develop a sense of self-satisfaction that pollutes your sacrifice. Padre Pio warned, the devil, who can't stop you from fasting and will try to make you fall through pride. He'll whisper to you, look how holy you are. Look how you sacrifice. The others don't do that. You're better than them. And if you listen to those whispers, your fast loses all its value. To combat this risk, Padre Pio recommended fasting in secret. Don't tell anyone that you're fasting. Don't let others see that you're not eating. If someone offers you food, refuse discreetly, without mentioning your fast. Make your sacrifice something between God and you, a sacred secret that no one else knows. The second risk is discouragement. As I said, the second day of the fast is particularly difficult. Your body protests, your mind doubts, and the devil uses that weakness to push you to give up. Padre Pio recounted that even he himself, despite all his holiness, had sometimes been tempted to abandon his fasts. The devil would appear to him and say, what's the point of torturing yourself like this? God isn't listening to you. That soul you're fasting for is maybe already in heaven, or maybe they're in hell and nothing can save them. You're wasting your time. Eat something. To combat these temptations, Padre Pio prayed the rosary. Every time discouragement rose, he would take his rosary and start reciting. The Marian prayer had the power to chase away negative thoughts and rekindle his determination. The third risk is attachment to the outcome. You fast for 3 days, you do everything correctly, you pray at the prescribed times, and then, at the dawn of the 3rd day, you await the vision. You await the confirmation. You await the sign that your deceased loved one is freed, and nothing comes. Padre Pio was adamant on this point. You cannot demand a confirmation. God isn't obligated to send you a vision. The fact that you don't have a sign doesn't mean that your fast didn't work. He would say, faith is believing without seeing. If you fast demanding proof, you're not really in faith. You're in bargaining. And God does not bargain. The only correct attitude is that of total abandonment. You offer your fast, you do your part, and then you leave the result in the hands of God. Maybe you'll have a confirmation, maybe not. In both cases, you must have faith that your sacrifice has been accepted and used according to the divine will. Some of Padre Pio's penitents never received visual confirmation of the liberation of their deceased loved ones. They fasted in pure faith without any sign. And Padre Pio would tell them, your faith without proof is more precious in the eyes of God than the faith of those who continue to believe. Your loved one is free, even if you don't see it yet. Let me tell you about what exactly happens in purgatory when someone fasts for a soul. Saint Anthony had revealed these details to Padre Pio during their mystical encounter, details that Padre Pio shared with a few of his closest spiritual sons. Purgatory, he explained, is not a geographical place. It's not an underground cavern filled with flames. It's a state of the soul, a state of intense purification, where the soul clearly sees all its imperfections and burns with the desire to free itself from them. This burning is not a punishment imposed from the outside. It's the fire of divine love that consumes everything that isn't pure in us. The soul in purgatory suffers because it sees God and can't yet unite with Him. It suffers from what the mystics call love sickness. When someone on earth fasts for that soul, something extraordinary happens. The sacrifice of the living creates a breach in the envelope of impurities that surrounds the soul. Through that breach, divine love can penetrate more intensely. Purification accelerates. What would have taken years of earthly time can be accomplished in a few days. Saint Anthony had used a striking image to explain this process. He had told Padre Pio, "Imagine a closed room filled with smoke. The soul is in this room and can't get out until the smoke is dissipated. Prayers are like small holes in the walls that let the smoke out slowly, but fasting is like opening a large window. The smoke escapes quickly, the room purifies, the soul can finally get out." This image helps to understand why 3 days of fasting can accomplish what years of prayers haven't been able to do. It's not that the prayers were useless. They created the small holes. They started the process. But fasting opens the window. That allows the completion. Now, you may be wondering what happens if you can't fast physically, if you're sick, if you're too old, if you have health problems that make fasting dangerous. Are you condemned to not be able to free your deceased loved ones? Not at all. Padre Pio had an answer for those people too. He taught them what he called the spiritual fast. Spiritual fasting involves abstaining from something important to you for 3 days. If you cannot fast from food, then choose something else, something that truly costs you, something whose deprivation creates real suffering. For some, it will be silence, 3 days without speaking, except for absolute necessities. For others, it will be solitude, 3 days without seeing anyone, locked away in prayer. Still others will renounce a particular pleasure to which they are attached, a cherished pastime, a favorite indulgence. The important thing isn't the precise nature of the deprivation. The important thing is that it's real, that it truly costs you, that it creates genuine suffering that you can offer for the soul of your departed loved one. Padre Pio told the story of an elderly woman who could no longer fast because of her diabetes. She desperately asked him how she could help her deceased son, whom she knew was in purgatory because of the dissolute life he had led. Padre Pio asked her, "What would it cost you the most to give up for 3 days?" She thought for a moment and replied, "My conversations with my neighbors. That's my only joy in life. We talk for hours every day." Padre Pio told her, "Then here is your fast. For 3 days, speak to no one except to pray. Offer that silence for your son. That silence will cost you as much as hunger costs others, and God will accept that offering." The old woman did what Padre Pio asked. 3 days of complete silence, 3 days without her cherished conversations, 3 days of solitude offered for her son. On the 3rd day, she had a dream. Her son appeared to her, young and handsome as he was before he fell into sin. He said to her, "Mother, your silence has spoken louder to heaven than all your words. I am free. Await me in paradise." This story illustrates an important truth. Fasting isn't just about food. Fasting is about sacrifice, and sacrifice is always personal. What costs one person little may cost another a great deal. God sees the heart. He measures not the nature of the sacrifice, but its sincerity. We're now approaching the end of this revelation. But before concluding, I must give you the practical instructions for beginning your own 3-day fast in preparation for the feast of Saint Anthony. If you decide to fast, here's what you need to do. Today, prepare yourself spiritually. Go to confession if you haven't done so recently. You must be in a state of grace. For your fast to be effective, choose the soul for whom you're going to fast. Write their name on a piece of paper that you'll keep close to you during those 3 days. Tomorrow, begin the day of detachment. As soon as you wake up, drink a glass of water, saying the prayer that I taught you. Eat nothing solid all day. Drink only water. Pray the rosary at least once. Recite the prayer of the fast at least 7 times during the day. Avoid all distractions. Remain in silence and recollection. The day after tomorrow, go through the day of purification. This is the most difficult day. Continue the water fast. Offer every moment of hunger for your departed loved one. Pray the rosary twice if possible. Resist the temptations of discouragement. Remember that the difficulty is the sign that your fast is working. On the 3rd day, live the day of liberation. Wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, if possible. Spend the next 3 hours in continuous prayer. Recite the complete rosary. Visualize your departed loved one rising towards the light. At dawn, make a final offering of your entire fast into the hands of the Virgin Mary. Then break the fast gently. Don't eat too much immediately. Start with broth, then light foods. Your body needs time to readjust. And above all, don't become attached to the result. You have done your part. The rest belongs to God. Have faith that your sacrifice has been accepted and used for the good of the soul of your departed loved one. If what you've just heard has touched you, if you feel that these teachings of Saint Anthony and Padre Pio can help other Catholics liberate their departed loved ones, then I ask you to support this work of dissemination. The Super Thanks button below this video isn't simply a donation button. It's your participation in a mission, the mission of making these forgotten truths known, the mission of giving Catholics back the spiritual tools that their ancestors knew, the mission of emptying purgatory soul by soul. Padre Pio said, each soul freed from purgatory becomes an intercessor for the one who freed them. You're not just doing an act of charity for the departed, you're gaining a powerful friend in heaven who will pray for you until your own death. Before we finish, I have a question for you, a question that I'd like you to meditate on. For whose soul are you going to fast? Who is that departed loved one who may have been waiting for years for someone to make this sacrifice for them? Your father, your mother, your spouse, your child? A friend, an ancestor whose name you don't even know? Write in the comments the first name of the person for whom you're going to fast. No personal details, just the first name. By writing it, you're making a first commitment, a first step towards the liberation of that soul. And if many of you write, we'll create an invisible communion, hundreds, perhaps thousands of people, fasting at the same time, for their departed loved ones. Imagine the spiritual power of this movement. Imagine the breaches that will open together in the walls of purgatory. May Saint Anthony the Great intercede for you. May Padre Pio guide you in your fast. May the Virgin Mary carry your sacrifices to heaven, and may the souls of your departed loved ones finally find the eternal peace they deserve. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.